Atlanta Press Club Debates 2008, the Democratic race for the U.S. Senate, is brought to you from Georgia Public Broadcasting. Here's the moderator for tonight's debate.
Good evening. I'm Frederica Whitfield, news anchor for CNN Weekend Edition. Welcome to our continuing series of Georgia primary election campaign debates originating from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Tonight's debate is organized by the Atlanta Press Club. We also welcome the statewide audience of GPB's radio network, which is simulcasting this debate, and our online audience at gpb.org. Now let's meet the candidates facing one another in Georgia's Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. They are, in alphabetical order, Dale Cardwell is a former investigative journalist for WSB. Cardwell won numerous Emmy and journalism awards during his 23 years at that television station. Vernon Jones is currently the CEO of DeKalb County. Prior to his election as CEO, Jones served 8 years in the Georgia General Assembly as a state representative from DeKalb County, holding positions on the Appropriations and Insurance Committees, as well as the Health and Ecology Committee. Rand Knight, an Atlanta native, is an ecologist, technology consultant, and entrepreneur with experience that ranges from agriculture and the environment to alternative energy and economic development. Currently, Knight is a director at QL2, working in national security technology and consulting. Josh Lanier is a Statesboro native and Vietnam veteran. Lanier worked in Washington for 35 years as a staff member in both branches of Congress and as a trade association executive and a nonprofit CEO. Now retired, he was most recently vice chairman of Lightstream Technologies, a developer of advanced technologies for the treatment of water. And Jim Martin is a Vietnam veteran who served in the Georgia House of Representatives for nearly 2 decades, focusing on health care issues, and helped to design Peach Care. Martin, an attorney currently living in Atlanta, also served as commissioner of Georgia's Department of Human Resources under Governors Barnes and Perdue. Those are the candidates. Here is the format for tonight's debate. In the first round, each candidate will answer one question. 1 minute will be allotted for the answer. 30 seconds will be allowed for the rebuttal. As moderator, I will determine if a rebuttal is appropriate. In the second round, the candidates will question one another. In the third round, our panelists will continue the questioning, and at the end of the question and answer period, each candidate will make a 30-second closing statement. Now let's meet our panel of prominent Georgia journalists selected by the Atlanta Press Club. They are Don Hobby, anchor for WALB-TV in Albany. James Salzer is a political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And our third panelist is Tom Baxter, who is editor of Southern Political Report. Panelists, please limit your questions to 15 seconds. In this round, the order of candidates to be questioned has been randomly selected, so we begin with Don Hobby's question for Vernon Jones.
Thank you, Frederica. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Jones, something that we all agree on and is of great concern are gasoline prices. All of you agree that we need to lessen our dependency on foreign oil. As a United States Senator, would you be in favor of domestic drilling for oil?
Well, I am certainly in favor of drilling as long as it's environmentally safe. Right now, there are 63 million acres that have been permitted by the federal government that has gone undrilled. I would like to see those who have the permission to go ahead and start to drill there. If there's no oil there, then we can come back and reevaluate whether we want to remove the ban from 1981. But I do favor alternative energy sources as well. As a matter of fact, I'm the only one up here who has a track record of doing renewable energy. At one of our landfills right now, we're capturing that methane gas and converting it back into green energy. We're actually turning trash into cash. So I'm very open to wind, solar, and biofuel types of alternative energy sources.
All right, you still had about 15 seconds. You don't want to take the extra 15?
I want to be your United States Senator.
All right, James Salzer, it's now your turn for a question to Rand Knight.
Mr. Knight, you've said that the most important issue facing the U.S. Senate, facing America, is the state of the economy, and you said one of the solutions is to work on clean, renewable energy, to create new energy sources. You also have said that you would like to have health insurance for all children, that you'd like to increase education spending fairly dramatically. How would you do this? Would you consider raising taxes, or would you consider continue borrowing the way Congress has been doing for the last 30, 40 years to pay for everything?
We don't need to borrow money in order to take care of our people. We don't need to raise taxes in order to take care of our society. We've got to start building a revenue base here in the United States by making things here at home again. Energy is the principal one of these things we've got to start making here. We're sending more than $1 trillion a year overseas for foreign oil when we could be keeping that money right here at home. In addition to paying for high oil prices that cause gasoline prices to be high, we're spending money on the energy that costs medicine prices to increase. It causes transportation prices to increase. It causes our insurance, everything to increase. So we've got to find a way to build jobs here at home that take care of the revenue we need. So if we start investing in renewable fuels here at home, including biofuels, things like algaculture, where we can breed algae and make 20,000 gallons of gasoline per acre per year for less than $1 a gallon, we're going to build wonderful jobs that create a tax base, and with this money we can start investing in our people again.
All right, Mr. Rand, time is up. Tom Baxter to Josh Lanier now.
Mr. Lanier, when Barack Obama was asked yesterday if he favored a bailout of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two giant government-backed mortgage companies, he said there were a lot of definitions of what a bailout might be. Mm-hmm. Do you favor any kind of bailout, and what kind of bailout would it be? What would it entail?
Well, having not looked at the proposal for both Fannie Mae and Sallie Mae, I think we are reaching the end of our bailout capacity. We've taken extraordinary steps on Wall Street as a result of this crisis. We have legislation moving now, Chris Dodd's legislation, which I hope passes, which actually can bring some of those who are facing that crisis back into the FHA program, refinance their mortgages. I have a child facing that kind of situation and caught in that, so it's sort of personal with me. But you know, these loans and how we've subsidized them over the years have actually been more expensive, particularly in college loans, than the ones that we make directly to the students. So, you know, when we start looking at Sallie Mae's and Fannie Mae's and all of the others that are now going to face distress, and I'm sure you've heard there's a bank that's in a similar situation over the weekend. We're going to have to look at some very tough measures. But I don't see the United States being able to bail out every institution, whether it's Wall Street, whether it's a supporting organization that we may encounter.
We'll have to leave it at that. Time's up. All right, to Jim Martin now from Dawn.
Mr. Martin, we have a health care crisis in our nation right now. The state children's health insurance program appears to offer at least a partial solution in that it provides insurance coverage for children whose families make too much to qualify for Medicaid that can't afford private insurance. Are you in favor of a shift in the S-CHIPS program to make it a government-run system that would pay for adults too?
Well, it's already a government-run system, the S-CHIP program is. I think that covering all children in this state is really the first step in meaningful universal health insurance. I'm proud of the fact that I was involved in the Peach Care program when it was first started. I think that was a great thing. No parent in this state should ever be in a situation where they can't provide health care for their children. So I'm in favor of anything we can do to make sure children are covered. Then we can look at further expanding public and private programs to make sure that all Georgians have access to affordable and accessible health care. That's one of the most important issues that the middle class is dealing with right now, is trying to find a way to be able to balance their budget, to pay for their health care cost, and be able at the same time to pay for the other costs that they have in their families. We've got to move toward a universal program in this country. As a United States Senator, I'll work on that.
All right, Dale Cardwell, you probably thought we forgot about you. We didn't. James has a question for you.
You've advocated, you've talked about a lot about the fact that you didn't take money from PACs, you don't take money from special interests. Do you support complete public financing of campaigns, A? B, how much would that cost? And C, how do you keep, how do you square with the notion that people should have the right to support whoever they want financially?
James, I'm so excited to be here tonight because for so many years I was on a panel like you are tonight, and I know what you're thinking at home. You're thinking, here are a group of gentlemen, 5 people that say they want to change the system. They talk about what they're going to do in Washington when they get there, and they mean well. They really do want to change the system. But as a journalist, I know the problem. I know that there are only 2 men on this panel tonight that could change the system, Josh Lanier and myself, because we're not taking PAC money. No matter how badly these men tell you that they're going to change the system, they can't do it. We have 60, 70 years of evidence that that's not happening in Washington. So, James, what I did is on June 3rd, 2007, I stood up and I said, I am going to stop this cold turkey. I am only going to work for the people of Georgia. And the way you do that is you stand for election and you say, I'm not going to be bought by the special interests that some of my opponents think they have to accept their money to get on television. I'm only working for you.
All right, Mr. Cardwell, time's up. Or that concludes round 1 of questions. In the second round now, the candidates will have the opportunity to ask 1 question of an opponent of his choice. Please limit those questions to 30 seconds. 1 minute will be allowed for answers, and the questioner then has 30 seconds for rebuttal. The order of the questions has been determined, again, by random drawing. Candidates, please indicate to whom the question is being addressed. The first question will be asked by Jim Martin.
This is to my friend Josh Lanier. Josh, next week or this week in the Senate, they'll probably be voting on the global AIDS legislation that was the cornerstone of President Bush's initiatives in trying to deal with AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis. What do you feel about that legislation? How would you vote? Would you vote to reauthorize it, or would you vote not to reauthorize it?
I would vote to reauthorize it, and I would also tell you that we've gotten actually more progress in Africa, and I think you've seen this with some of the private foundations who hardly ever get as much recognition as they should. Bill Gates and some of the others over there, even President Clinton's group, is doing a marvelous job over there. But that's a responsibility. I mean, that's something good about the United States. So I think I would be just like you. I would be in the I column on that.
All right, and Jim, you have 30 seconds.
Well, that's a very important thing. It's one of the few things I think that President Bush has done right, which is the Global AIDS Initiative, and it's one that needs to be reauthorized on bipartisan terms. Frankly, we need to have more bipartisan cooperation in Washington to deal with the kind of issues. It's the one issue, the one program that has really lifted the United States up as a helpful partner in the world community dealing with some very important issues.
All right, thank you. All right, Vernon Jones now has the opportunity to ask a question of one of his opponents.
Thank you.
Josh Lanier will then ask the next question.
I would like to ask Josh Lanier. Josh is from South Georgia. I've spent a lot of time down in South Georgia working to get to know the people down there. I'm a country boy myself, so I've fit in just fine. Josh, I just want you, I want to know, when I get elected, come next Tuesday, Tuesday, day after tomorrow, that is. Josh, will you support me? Will you come out and endorse my campaign, help me work throughout South Georgia, bringing families and communities together so there's not 2 Georgias, just 1 Georgia?
Vernon, I'm happy to make that commitment to anyone standing up here. Anyone who gets the Democratic nomination, I have cleared my calendar from August all the way through Election Day. I am happy to organize. If I'm not the one, I will be on the SWAT team. You can bet on that, brother.
My response is, Josh has been a gentleman, and I know it's important to South Georgia. He's the only one that's running from South Georgia, so I appreciate him saying that. That is so important that we can work together, because there's no North or South Georgia, there's Georgia, and we need people like Josh and others to come together after this is over so we can move forward with this state becoming a blue state.
All right, Mr. Josh Lanier, with the next question. We're all getting along so nicely here right now.
Well, that's actually the way the Senate should operate. So, let me respond and send one back to my friend Jim Martin here. Jim, over 80% of people in the United States now feel that Washington itself has basically become a special interest group where we're just sort of taking care of our own folks. How do we earn that trust back if we don't run the money changers out of town and sort of get to the public financing system that was talked about earlier?
Well, I think that I may have an unfair advantage because I have a record. And I have a record, long-term record of service to this state. People know where I stand. They know I can't be bought. They know that I have stood up for the working people of this state as long as I've been in public life. And so they have to look at my record and determine whether my record justifies sending me to the United States Congress. When I'm in the Congress, I will work in the United States Senate to make sure that we make take out the money out of elections and make sure that we make elections more fair and prevent the special interests from having the enormous amount of control they have in Washington right now.
All right, Mr. Lanier.
The only follow-up I would say is after spending 35 years watching that system, and I really admire your service in the state legislature, if you're the one to go to Washington, I just want to tell you, your eyes are going to pop out when you see how bad the system is up there, Jim. But we'll be there to help you.
All right. The questioning continues now with Dale Cardwell.
Thank you, Frederica. This is for my friend Jim Martin, who I admire a lot, and Jim's worked hard for the state of Georgia. But, Jim, when you were sitting up there at the top of 2 Peachtree Street, and you were helping Sonny Perdue cut the DHR budget by $150 million, something that you were boasting about in the first couple of forums that we were in. You're not saying that much today. But you were helping Sonny Perdue, not Roy Barnes, cut the budget. And then we found out that the abuse rate for children in Georgia who were returned to abusive homes shot up from 4.2% to 5.7% while you were helping Sonny Perdue cut the budget.
You're actually out of time on asking the question, so I'm going to give you 3 more seconds to get to the point.
That's not fighting for people, Jim. How do you explain that?
That must mean I'm in the lead, doesn't it? It's a very serious question. I became commissioner of the Georgia Department of Human Resources 2 weeks after 9/11, during the most historic decline in state revenues ever, and worked hard with Governor Barnes to make sure that we balanced the budget. We had to make some difficult decisions based on the priorities that were most important for the state. The number one priority that was funded fully at the Department of Human Resources was Child Protective Services, so we believed in that. And after Governor Barnes left office, I did continue for another year working with Governor Perdue, trying to do the same thing to protect Georgia children. Every time a child died or was seriously injured that was known to the Department of Human Resources, it troubled me dearly, but I have a long-standing record of being concerned about the children in this state and standing up for them, and I did that as well as I could as the Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Human Resources.
Mr. Cardwell.
Jim, you cut that budget under Sonny Perdue, not Roy Barnes, and you were forced to resign from office after the death of 2 small children that were in your care. So let's just be straight about it.
Would you like another moment to respond to that?
That's simply not true.
That's a pretty harsh accusation that you were involved in.
That's pretty harsh.
Directly.
Number one, it's pretty harsh. It's also not true.
All right. I think we have to wait for your turn, actually. Right now, it's the turn of, at least in this round of questioning, Mr. Rand Knight.
Thank you. This question is for Josh Lanier. Josh, you know that I've been traveling around this state for 14 months, spoken in more than 100 counties. You and I have been at several functions all around South Georgia and North Georgia to boot. I wanted to ask you, you also are aware that I'm the first PhD in any biological science to ever run for the U.S. Senate, and that I received the endorsements of the AFL-CIO and the Georgia teachers. However, some of our opponents on the stage, when asked by the Atlanta Journal and Constitution why I received those endorsements, they said they didn't know. Can you help them? Do you know why I received those endorsements?
Well, let me just first say to my friend Jim Martin, if we're counting questions, I'm catching up with you. But, you know, Rand, I may not be the best guy to ask that question because, as you know, I declined to be interviewed by those groups simply on principle because I'm opposed to money being involved in the process. I will say this for you, though, my friend. You are probably the hardest working man in politics in Georgia right now. I've passed you on highways. I get to where now I just wave at most cars that go by, assuming one of them is you. But, you know, you did the work. You put in the time. You know, and even though I bypassed the process, you know, I salute you for it. Good job. Very good job.
Mr. Knight?
So I would hope that you also agree that the youth and passion and in high contrast to Saxby Chambliss, someone who has the fire to get up there and actually fight for democratic values, has a part in that.
You know, I love that, Rand. You got the fire, I got the belly. Let's do it, brother. You know.
So tonight you're equals. Is that what I'm hearing here?
That's right.
All right. Yeah. All right, well, that concludes the second round of this questioning. For our third round now, we return to our panel of journalists who will ask questions of the candidates of their choice. Candidates will be allowed 1 minute to respond. And again, as moderator, I will determine if the opposing candidates will be given 30 seconds for that rebuttal. So we begin this round with a question from Tom Baxter of Southern Political Report.
Mr. Jones, you said that you voted for George Bush twice because the Democratic candidates in those elections wrote off Georgia while George Bush campaigned here. The president also came here several times in 2002 to campaign for Saxby Chambliss in his race against Max Cleland. So it's fair to ask, who did you vote for in that race? And if you didn't vote for Chambliss, what distinction did you make between him and, and President Bush?
Well, you know, I've always worked across the aisle with both parties. That's how I've been able to get things done as Chief Executive Officer, as well as the Georgia General Assembly, and spent a lot of time in Washington working on a bipartisan basis, bringing resources back to Georgia, working Jack Kingston, Republican, down in Savannah, who's a Republican. Also, working with Congressman Sanford Bishop, who's a Democrat. They both serve on appropriations. We were able to bring resources back to DeKalb County, back to Georgia. I'm an independent thinker. I'm not hijacked by the right, or I should say the left wing of the Democratic Party. As you know, many times African Americans have been taken for granted by the Democratic Party. My vote is not for granted. I respect all those gentlemen, but I must admit I was disappointed when Senator Chambliss attacked Senator Max Cleland the way that he did with the Swift Boat connection. I did not like that. I thought that was unfair. And so obviously, at that point, it put a disdain in my mouth for the way he had campaigned, and I supported the Democratic nominee, who was Senator Cleland.
All right, Don?
Mr. Martin, well, first of all, it warmed my heart to hear Mr. Jones bring up South Georgia. I think I'm from South Georgia, and I think this is probably the first time South Georgians have had the opportunity to hear from you gentlemen, because this is a statewide broadcast. So we have lots of questions for you guys down there where we are below the gnat line. One of the questions I'd like to ask you, Mr. Martin, is about the Farm Bill. Saxby Chambliss, of course, is a ranking Republican on the Senate Ag Committee and had a big hand in the crafting of this bill, and subsequently had to vote against President Bush for this bill. Would you have supported this bill, and what would you do as a senator to ensure that our farmers are protected in the future?
The farming industry in our state is very important. Albany is an important part of the farming culture in our state, farming economy of our state. And I've been to Albany a number of times, and I just enjoy that part of the state. The Farm Bill was a balanced, bipartisan piece of legislation, the continuation of years of bipartisan farm support, providing farmers with credit to buy seed and to buy fertilizer to plant their crops, and some certainty that they'd have a price that they can make a living on at the end of the process. So that basic structure is in place, and I'm in favor of that. There are some problems with the Farm Bill, but you have to vote on it as a package. One of the interesting features in the Farm Bill, of course, is the large part of it that is food stamps. And it's a commentary on how badly we're treating our soldiers that there had to be a provision added to the Farm Bill that exempted from food stamp calculations combat pay. So we have so many of our soldiers who are relying, their families are relying on food stamps. That's not an issue related to the Farm Bill, but the answer to your question is precisely that it's a broad bipartisan bill I probably would have supported.
Don, if I could follow up on that just a second.
Sure.
I used to work for the chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee, and I want to tell you, the Farm Bill today is really not a farm bill. What we have today is a bucket of money, and what we've tried to do is use that as a vehicle to move almost any program you can think of. Most of the farmers in Georgia are not touched by this bill, but a lot of the agribusiness is, and all manner of other programs. If we're going to actually talk about doing something for farmers, we've got to get back to a farm bill in the next Congress and away from this sort of omnibus appropriations and frankly, earmark type of bill. But farmers need to get much better than what this bill is. This is a bad piece of legislation.
Open floor on others who'd like to comment on this very topic.
I'd be happy to. Actually, if you take a look at the Farm Bill, Saxby Chambliss championed that bill, but what most people don't realize is that he brought $16 million back to Colquitt County in 2006, and that seems impressive. But when you take a look at how much money the farm laborers make in Colquitt County, folks, we're talking $335 a week. So who's getting that $16 million? I'll tell you who, the giant agribusiness interests that are paying for Saxby Chambliss's campaigns. That's where that money's going, and somebody's got to go up there and, as Josh says, divide the Farm Bill from the pork bill.
All right, Mr. Knight.
Yes, if we want to take care of our farmers, we can start growing our food locally here in Georgia again. We can stop paying to dispose of our agricultural waste and actually produce gasoline and diesel out of it for less than $1 a gallon. The waste product left over from the gasoline and diesel production is actually a char that can be used as a fertilizer for our farmers so they can stop paying for petrochemical-based fertilizers. We have a massive economic opportunity for our farmers here in Georgia to start taking care of energy and start taking care of our economy at the same time, and we can no longer ignore this.
Mr. Jones.
I think your question was, would he have supported or not supported it. Jim Martin was correct to say that that bill encompassed a lot of different things, important things for Georgia, certainly for needy families. And it was a tough decision, but for the president to be against that bill, of course, he was wrong at this particular time. He was flat wrong. And farming, I'm the only country boy up here that actually grew up on a farm. That bill was not directed towards farmers, and to start to talk about what we need to grow here or there, that's not the issue I think she was talking about. You were talking about would you or would you not have voted for that bill. You don't have time to farm. That bill was on the table. You had to vote it up or down.
All right. And, you know, Mr. Knight, since you brought up growing locally, I'd like to ask to all of you, when we talk about Made in America, Georgia is one of the states hardest hit by outsourcing, by textile industries closing up, drying up. So if elected, Senator, what efforts will you make to try to make sure that there is more, maybe perhaps a revival of Made in America or a preservation of Made in America?
Well, I personally would like to see what I call mirror trade, which means that we will no longer do business with you as a country if you don't meet our labor laws, our environmental standards. We don't allow children 7 years old to sweat in shops 16 hours a day, and we shouldn't allow other countries that we trade with to do that. We need to start looking out for holding other countries accountable for the kind of laws and regulations and health and safety obligations that we have here in this country. And again, with respect to the opportunity we have here to keep jobs here, we have great jobs for construction and manufacturing and restart factories again and take care of people here economically and environmentally.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, I think I'm the only one up here that has experience of running an economic development department, creating jobs, providing tax incentives so people can come and expand their businesses and we can grow jobs. The issue is how many of our jobs are going to a foreign country and we're giving those companies tax incentives to take our jobs away over to another country. That's wrong. And when you look at the trade agreement, the fees that we pay for exporting and versus the fees they pay for importing, it's not a level playing field. They're charging us more than we're charging them. And so I'm for investing in America, building roads and bridges and the infrastructure like Franklin Roosevelt did during the Depression time to start investing in America and creating jobs.
Mr. Lanier.
Let me steal a line from my friend Vernon and say that I'm the only one probably up here who has founded a company and taken it out into 44 markets worldwide. But Georgia has an opportunity here. Georgia could become one of the great new entrepreneurial states. We have the resources, we've got the ports, we've got the higher education system. This is really a challenge for local leadership and state leadership, but the potential is here to do some fairly dramatic things. On the national level, I would certainly promote and push where we've got these new startup technology companies like Rand was referring to. We need to be looking at some tax incentives there. We need to be looking at getting away with the penalty on investment tax and so forth, and apply that nationwide. But here in Georgia, we've got a big opportunity here in Georgia.
Mr. Martin?
There are three things we need to do. First of all, we need to make sure that our trade agreements are fairly negotiated, and they look after the working people of this country, not the special interests. Second thing is we have to have universal health insurance, some sort of way that people can move around jobs, leave the job that they hate, and move into small business. The third thing, and the most important thing in Georgia, the federal government has got to partner with the state to try and improve our educational system, because that's the heart of our future in this state. That's how our children are going to be able to compete in what really is a global economy.
And Mr. Cardwell, I know you've reported on this as a journalist, so what would be your solutions as senator?
Well, I'm interested in how Jim says the special interests have to be taken out of the process, because the fact is, if you've seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington from 1939, Jimmy Stewart found out that big, giant business ran the United States. Well, what's changed in 60 years? Big, giant multinational corporations buy politicians and then tell them exactly how they can and can't vote. Folks, I have no reason to mislead you. I'm not taking that PAC money. And once again, I'll only work for you. And when you hear someone say that they will actually remove that influence, I'll actually remove that influence.
All right, James?
This is a question for all of you. I'd be interested. Start with Mr. Cardwell. A lot of things you're talking about in terms of the economy, you're talking about solutions that could take years, if not decades. The major issue right now, or one of the major issues, is gas prices. What would each of you propose, if anything, that could be done in the next 6 to 12 months to do anything about the price of gas? And does Congress have any role in that?
One of the greatest tragedies of 9/11 is that on the 12th of September that we didn't have a president that went on national television and called for a patriot's call for conservation. We should have immediately started conserving like our parents and our grandparents were asked to do in World War II, to save rubber, to save tin, but in this case we've got to save energy. If we would do that, then it would burst the special interest bubble, the commodity trading bubble that is driving gas prices up. For years I worked with Clark Howard at Channel 2 and we talked about what was driving gas prices up. Supply and demand has a lot to do with it, but it's time that Congress enforces the close of this Enron bubble that allows these commodity traders to drive up the price of gasoline. It's time to do something about it.
All right, you each have 30 seconds to actually respond to this question. Mr. Jones.
Yes, there's no way gas is going to go down tomorrow. There's no real short-term solution. What I do propose, and if I were senator today, I would ask for a full review on the trading to see if there are any price gouging going on. And I believe that's a legitimate area we should review. Long-term, certainly we're going to have to develop alternative energy sources, but let's not mislead people and say tomorrow there's something that any one of us up here can do that's going to drive gasoline prices down. Just not going to happen. But we have to do like John F. Kennedy said. When he declared that we're going to put a man on the moon, we have to declare that we're going to develop alternative energy sources and become less dependent on foreign oil, because it's getting us in wars, it's costing us, and it's just not something we need to be doing right now.
All right, Mr. Knight.
You hear a lot of talk about the speculation and trading here in oil prices, and we can actually use this to our advantage. If we take this seriously in this country, and the United States government says, like John F. Kennedy did about the moonshot, that within 5 to 10 years we will be off of foreign oil completely, that we will actually be producing all of our gasoline and diesel here in this our own country, you will see the price of oil drop immediately in a matter of weeks and months. As soon as the funding starts getting to the people to start taking care of these solutions, the price of oil will drop overnight.
Mr. Lanier.
Following on what Rand just said, I would only add this. If the President of the United States actually said that one night, that in 5 to 10 years we're going to be out of the market, particularly in unstable regions of the world, I think you'd start seeing reduces in oil prices before he got off the air, because we have, but because the long-term speculation market is there. But in the short term, to answer your question, Vernon gave you the correct answer. I mean, all we can do from the federal level is tell you the truth and not get caught up in these silly gimmicks, which Senator Chambliss and others have proposed about rolling back the gas tax for the summer, but yet having to borrow the money from the General Treasury to cover the Highway Trust Fund when the Treasury is in deficit. That's just basically asking your grandchildren to pay for your tax break.
Mr. Martin.
I've been talking about the speculation in the oil futures market since I've been in this campaign. Received a letter, an email actually, from Delta Airlines this afternoon that said that they believe there's a speculation in the commodities market, and that $20 to $30 a barrel is a result of speculation. The barrel is sold 20 times before it actually is refined. There's something wrong there, and it's a reflection on what this administration has done in not regulating the financial institutions in this country.
Tom?
Mr. Martin, no matter what timetable we follow in getting our troops out of Iraq, I know there's a lot of debate about that right now, for many decades after this, the government's going to be dealing with the generation of veterans coming out of this war and the special needs that they have. What are the most important factors in reforming the Veterans Administration to meet those challenges?
First, it needs to be adequately funded. Senator Chambliss has voted time and time again not to adequately fund the Veterans Administration. Secondly, the health system for veterans needs to be a first-class system that will take care of veterans no matter what their injuries are, so that they can be made whole. The third thing is we need to have a well-funded GI Bill to allow folks who've now leaving the service to be able to re-enter the economic society in our country and be a productive citizens. The GI Bill of the Second World War cost about $1 for every 7 in new economic activity that occurred as a result of that. We need to take our veterans seriously. We need to take care of them. We have that obligation as Americans.
Mr. Lanier.
I'll just add to that by saying that what Jim just said is very true. The problem with VA funding is it's not predictable. I mean, the bill is up constantly. I mean, it's every year, every 2 years. It's all over the map. And thus, those that are in that system and those who are out in the hospital are just worrying year to year. I mean, what's the program going to be? That's not acceptable for veterans. I'm one, Jim's one. You know, we all know, and we've all been through some kind of treatment there. But predictability, stability, that's what Congress should step up and do. And what they're trying to do is avoid an entitlement program and do it on cyclical budgets. They've got to set that in course and live by it.
Mr. Knight.
We have the money to take care of our veterans if we just stop wasting money and the fraud, the abuse, and the waste in Iraq right now. We've got to start prioritizing our people, especially the people that serve our country first. We've got to take the money that we're putting toward war and start putting it toward a peaceful solution to the problems we're facing here in this country. We need people who understand the pain on the ground to be up there leading and fighting for us. We've also got to start building revenues here and stop sending our money overseas for foreign oil. We are literally paying for the terrorists to kill our men and women. As soon as we keep that money in our own backyard, we can have the best health care in the world right here at home.
Mr. Jones?
You know, I'm a son of a veteran, World War II veteran. My father served honorably and was a disabled veteran. And I remember how long it took for him to get his VA benefits. And my family went without that income that he was providing. And I was fortunate enough when he finally got his VA benefits, I was able to go to college, and that changed my life. I have another brother who served in Vietnam and 3 other brothers that served in the military. It's important to protect our veterans. As the CEO of DeKalb County, I spent a lot of time at the Veterans Hospital, both taking my dad and on Valentine's Day visiting those men and women who serve honorably. I was recently down in Dublin, Georgia, talking to the administration down there about what we can do to protect veterans' benefits and keep them from eroding. Every year they're getting less and less benefits, and we need to protect and serve our veterans.
All right, Mr. Cardwell.
In 1986, I received a call from a pastor from a church in Birmingham, Alabama, while I was working there as an investigative reporter. And he told me, Dale, I'm here in this hospital room, and the nurse just came in, and she literally stuck a steel fork in my stomach. And I'm getting terrible care, and nobody will listen to me. Well, I went there and I talked to him. I put his story on camera, and it was a lead story, and we made some serious changes in the VA hospital in Birmingham. I've had a 23-year track record of doing that in Raleigh, and doing it in Nashville, and doing it here in Atlanta. I have a track record of fighting for people in these situations. I supported the Webb Amendment. I think it's a good law, and it's time to treat our veterans better.
All right, we've covered veterans' benefits, energy challenges, and industry failures. Don?
Let's talk about water. As you know, Mr. Lanier, we have an abundant supply of water in South Georgia, and we're working really hard to hold on to it. You have stated in the past that one solution to the tri-state water wars would lie in the Bureau of Reclamation's water conservation program, and that Georgia should get involved in that. How would that help, and what else could you do as a senator to protect our water supply?
Well, to answer the first part, how that would help the state of Georgia is this. Many of us have mentioned that we're going to have to do things other than just simply say Lake Lanier is low. We get into water recycling for industry and things like that. That program specifically addresses that, also for agriculture and so forth. With the type of water stress that we're experiencing in North Georgia, it is the same as in Arizona or in California where the agricultural belt is there and so forth. That program was created specifically for that. We should be part of that. I mean, this thing of water shortage is not limited to the southwestern United States. And doing that alone can take a lot of stress off of what is delivered to communities, to individuals in their homes. Remember, when we treat water, only about 2% of it is consumed by a human. The rest of it is used in industry, for washing, for whatever you can imagine. That's the kind of water that recycling continues to keep our resource in place rather than sending it on down.
All right, I'm going to mix it up a little bit. Mr. Cardwell.
I think the tragedy of that situation is that we had 3 Republican governors that got together for a photo op, and they didn't do anything about our water problem. We have to update the Corps of Engineers. If you know that Lake Lanier got even lower because there was a device that was broken and no one knew it because the Corps of Engineers was not up to date. We need to make certain that our Corps of Engineers is up to date. And, you know, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, if Mother Nature gives us so much water into Lake Lanier, it just makes sense to only release the amount of water that Mother Nature puts into Lake Lanier to take care of everyone fairly.
Mr. Knight?
Yes, I appreciate the question. I've studied and practiced in freshwater ecology and water systems for years, and I can tell you right now we've got to take a multi-pronged approach. First of all, Rory Barnes had set aside land for water reservoirs that were sold by Sonny Perdue. We've got to get fresh leadership in office that understands these problems so we can start looking out for the opportunities. Second of all, conservation is key. We have an opportunity to put a lot of jobs and good resources into conservation of water resources here in Georgia. Thirdly, we've got to look for the waste. About 20% of all the water here in Atlanta is wasted through leaks. So we need to take a look at how many jobs we can create to start taking care of water problems.
Mr. Martin.
I love the River Aquarium in Albany. and I love the ecology of the Flint River and all that tells you about. It's important that we have a plan in this state about what we're going to do about water and the conservation of water and the allocation of water. The Republican administration in Georgia has refused to do that. As United States Senator, I will work to see if we can find some federal funds to help that plan get finished so we can know where we are and then make some reasonable decisions about how we're going, making sure that there's a fair amount of water for everybody in this state.
Mr. Jones.
First of all, I want to say to my friends down in South Georgia, it's not North Georgia versus South Georgia. We're all in this together. We can either hang together or hang separately. I prefer to hang together. I'm the only one that has a record on dealing with water conservation. We've implemented water policies in DeKalb County to implement low-flow fixtures. At the same time, we have a study going underway right now on how we can address or use non-drinking water, reuse or recycling water. At the same time, when you look at a number of the water wars and the issues, our senator was Johnny-come-lately because he doesn't understand the issue. He's never had to provide or deliver water to citizens. I would have met with the 3 states and the president and all those that are involved early on to start to deal with the water issues. But I would have been in touch with the local governments and the state government. It has to be a group of us working together.
All right, time's up.
That
was a quick 30 seconds. I know, it always seems to go just like this. We always want more time. All right, James, you're up next.
This is for Mr. Jones. You've described your opponents as liberals. You've described the media as liberals when you don't like what they write about you. Barack Obama has been described quite often as one of the most liberal members of the U.S. Senate. Why are you not supporting John McCain and putting his face on your brochures?
Well, first of all, John McCain voted for an unbalanced budget. John McCain voted to take our men and women to Iraq. John McCain has not worked to build and invest in Georgia and America, the infrastructure. John McCain, I think he's a great American, served in his country well. But he's out of touch with mainstream Georgians. I think Obama, by his mere interest of wanting to come to Georgia, want to turn Georgia back to a blue state, he's talking about family values. He's talking about building communities. I embrace those ideas. He's talking about fiscal responsibility. I embrace those ideas. So I support Barack Obama. I think he'll be good for this country. I'm going to do everything I can to work to get him elected. But it's almost like a lot of other candidates. They use George Bush's face. They use other candidates are using Obama's picture and other people's pictures. So that's nothing new. The fact of it is, I endorse Senator Obama. My opponents, they call his name all the time. Some of them have other folks' pictures in their pamphlets, but nobody says anything about it. So that's why I said the liberal media has only attacked me, hasn't attacked anybody else on this podium. And you know, the feathers come to the chicken. I like the liberal media. I like getting back at them when I'm successful.
Echo, I know it seems like I'm picking on you, but time's up. Sorry about that. You're the only one, Mr. Jones, among the 5 here that kind of boasts of crossing the aisle, but certainly anybody else has 30 seconds in which to state your case as well.
Well, I've worked hard to make sure that I reached across the aisle. In fact, that's why I was so successful in the Georgia legislature. The Fulton County Family Court was something that Tom Campbell and I created, a bipartisan effort. You can't get anything done of any merit, of any substance in the legislative process unless you're able to work with people, even people that you may not agree with on everything. And so I've always done that, and that's what's missing in Washington, quite frankly. The first thing I will do as a United States Senator is meet with Johnny Isakson and say, we've got a Republican and a Democratic senator from Georgia. How can we work together to really take care of the interests of the people in this state?
Mr. Lanier?
First of all, the Congress only in about 3 days a week now, and frankly, some of the leadership tells its members, get out of here and don't fraternize, basically, with the enemy. We've got a horrible situation up there, and you can track it back to money. I just want to know before my time's up, Vernon, if I was to raise enough money to print a card, would you be in it with me?
It'd be an honor.
You're the man.
Josh, a great American.
That's nice. Would you like to comment on it, Mr. Knight?
Well, the issues I'm talking about here, about taking care of our families and growing jobs that get our economy back on track and taking care of our seniors and health care and education, these are not Republican or Democratic issues. These are American issues that we've all got to face. I agree, the 3-day work week is ridiculous. I will get up there and reinstitute the 5-day work week and move my family to Washington, D.C. with me so that we can get to know Republicans and Democrats' families alike, just like it used to be when Republicans and Democrats spent time deliberating with each other, and they had a respect for each other that's missing now because it's too divisive, and we're not taking care of our people, we're just taking care of big business and big money.
All right, Mr. Cardwell, anybody else's picture that you'd like to put on your banner or poster?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to put Barack Obama's picture on my banner, and it's real simple because I'm the only person on this platform that endorsed him before Super Tuesday. On January the 27th, I put my hat in the ring with Barack Obama for a very simple reason. He's not taking PAC money. And it made the state Democrats all over the country very uncomfortable because all of a sudden, Barack Obama, when he won the nomination, or obviously is going to win it, he said, don't take PAC money anymore to the state parties. Jim's taking PAC money. Vernon's taking PAC money. I'm not taking PAC money because I'm working for you.
Can I respond to that?
Sure can.
Dale is a special interest. Dale worked for the liberal Channel 2 news media. The AJC is a partner, and they have a radio show. They have never scrutinized him. He has gotten a free ride because of the special interest. Nobody has ever scrutinized him. And we all know that he misled Channel 2. He was reporting on me and other subject matters while he knew he was well intended to run for office.
All right, that's a pretty strong charge. Free ride, you misled people by reporting on him, and now being a contender.
He got millions of dollars of free advertising, just free.
There was a very, very powerful man in DeKalb County. He ran a lot of jobs. People were scared to death of him. He controlled grants, and he called a lot of people together one day to call me a lot of dirty names. And he said I was unfair and that I was doing things that harmed the public. That man is now in prison, not only the convicted killer of Derwin Brown, but the confessed killer of Derwin Brown. And I stand before you tonight, and I told you the truth, and I had the guts to do so.
Okay. Tom, you're going to help us change topics here?
Yeah. Mr. Knight, you've criticized Senator Chambliss for not heeding warnings from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Forestry Service about the threat of extreme drought in our region, and not asking for the pre-allocation of emergency preparedness funding for the state. But the truth is the U.S. has been beset by record tornadoes and floods this year, and while the government's immediate response to those disasters has been an improvement on Katrina, the nation's disaster preparedness system remains deeply suspect. How would you go about repairing it?
Well, again, we've got to take a look at the real risks to our national security right now. Climate change is a real issue. We've got to transform to a low-carbon economy because climate change drives drought. Drought leads to food shortage and increased natural disasters and infectious diseases and invasive species. So I suggest, number one, we start taking climate change very seriously. Number two, we stop wasting money on this war in Iraq and start taking care of our own people. If we have billions of dollars a day to spend on wars overseas, we certainly can pump more money into here at home and taking care of national security in our own backyard. We've also got to look at the big picture. Again, we're borrowing money from other countries so that we can buy goods that are made in other countries. Why don't we start making our food here, making our energy here, and start focusing on keeping the dollars in our own backyard? If we can't keep our own house in order, and emergency preparedness funding is a big part of that, we've got to be able to take care of our people first. We have no business going over to other countries and spending money building schools and hospitals and roads for them while our own people are at risk of natural disasters.
All right, Dawn, next question.
I'd like to stay with you, Mr. Knight, and talk a little bit about education. As you know, of course, test scores for Georgia students rank near the bottom of the nation. Kids are being taught test and not subject matter anymore. What is a solution to this problem? Don't you have a plan, I think you call it the Green Deal, which would, you kind of combine your two passions, education and environmental issues?
That's right. Biology and business, economy, environment, education, these are all one issue, truly. We've got to have the money to fund education. My mother was a public school teacher here in Atlanta, and she taught me the passion for knowledge and a hunger for learning and why we need to do the right thing, and that starts with our children. The National Education Association and their 3.2 million teachers have endorsed me, along with the Georgia Association of Educators and their 42,000 teachers here in Georgia. They're backing me because they know I have a vision and I share their values for focusing on our children's needs first, and that means reducing class sizes. That means raising teacher salaries. That means building more schools and more colleges and less jails and prisons. Again, it's about prioritizing on our needs of taking care of our own people here. And if we can't take care of our children, we certainly can't take care of the other problems we're facing. So yes, we've got to take education seriously in order to become competitive in this world again and put America back on top. We have a massive economic opportunity to start investing in education here and look out for our environmental problems in the future.
James?
You've talked about at some point about the need to, your desire, I should say, to pull back from what's going on in Iraq. And I guess my question is that a commitment to say we should be out of, or we should drastically lower the number of troops we have in the Middle East, or just Iraq? Because it looks like Afghanistan is back on fire, and so are we going to be just taking troops out of Iraq and moving them to Afghanistan? And
I think the first part of that is that there was a serious incident today where 9 American GIs were killed in Afghanistan. And the military leaders of this country are saying we need to increase the number of troops in Afghanistan. But let's step back to Iraq just a second and say my position on that is that the policy decision needs to be made for lots of reasons. One is to be able to focus on Afghanistan, the other national security interests. The policy decision by the President and the Congress needs to be made that we're leaving Iraq. And then we allow our military leaders on the ground to decide how quickly we can do that, consistent with the safety of our troops and giving the people of Iraq an opportunity to stand on their own 2 feet. I believe the military leaders will quickly move us out of Iraq and redeploy our troops so we can be more effective in dealing with the threat of global terrorism.
Okay, Mr. Martin, you all have just 15 seconds in which to respond after doing the math. So, Mr. Jones.
First of all, I don't believe in a set time to withdraw men and women over there. First of all, let the generals on the ground, let them make that determination. As a U.S. Senator, I want to listen to them. I want to understand what the issues are. I do support, though, shifting the responsibility of the war to the Iraqi people and its government, taking our men and women out of harm's way, off the front line, but at the same time provide them with the resources and training so they can defend themselves. But we have to, because our army right now is, oh, my time is out. Okay.
Okay. That's okay, because you actually got 30 seconds. I know. Didn't feel like it. We each have 30 now. We've redone our math, Mr. Cardwell.
Once again, what Vernon just said is absolutely correct, but the slight difference is I will not be working for Halliburton. Halliburton is not going to be deciding when Dale Cardwell votes to leave Iraq or leave Afghanistan. 90% of our troops are in Iraq when the war is becoming more and more, as James said, in Afghanistan. And so I support this idea of working with our generals in the field and determining the proper time to not only withdraw from Iraq, but to also beef up our efforts in Afghanistan.
Mr. Knight?
Yes, again here, we've got to invoke the help of our allies in taking care of this problem. We cannot be the world's police any longer when we cannot take care of our own people. We have got to focus our security resources here at home. Our ports are at risk, and we need to start taking care of national security issues here at home. The military battles we have been waging have been making us a bankrupt country. We have got long-term security issues with respect to energy and water here at home, and we have a massive economic opportunity to get out of these problems and start taking care of our people. But it's not war, it's peace.
All right. And Mr. Lanier?
We're on an unsustainable course there, as I think we all recognize in terms of the cost of it, what we're able to achieve, and frankly what the administration says is their objective, which is to change people's opinions now. And I'm not familiar with any military that's very good at that. But actually, I think by the time we finish talking about this, events will have taken control of itself. I mean, you're seeing the Maliki government now start to move toward a memorandum of understanding, which has more of a timetable than even we have talked about. I think we're going to see that take place. And if it does, you know, the Senate, anyone in the Senate should be supporting that. And if I've got any time left, I'll yield it back to Vernon, who had more to say.
Zero time. Actually, we'll give you that time on your closing statements because we are out of time for this question period. So let's do the closing statements now from each of our candidates right here in Georgia's Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate. Each candidate will have 30 seconds. The order of the closing statements was randomly determined once again before the broadcast. The first statement will come from Rand Knight.
We must seize this historic moment to do the right thing by our people. We must send fresh leadership to Washington that is trained in science and engineering and technology, people who can wear down those who are standing for only the wealthiest in this society and big business. We have an opportunity to start taking care of energy here at home and looking out for our children's education and taking care of national security back here on our own soil. I will go up to Washington, D.C. and use my ability to negotiate to cut the best deal for our country and look out for the future of this country, not the past.
Josh Lanier, 30 seconds.
Thank you. My friends, if you're one of the 70% of Georgians who doesn't believe that a lot of these issues are going to be dealt with unless we get the money out of politics, here's what I want you to know after 35 years up there. You're absolutely right, and I agree with you. That's why I'm in this race. That's why I've never held a fundraiser. That's why I don't take donations over $100. That's why I won't participate in politics as usual. Here's what I want you to do on Tuesday. Just vote your conscience. If we just do right, we can actually change America. I'm Josh Lanier, and I'd be honored to have your vote.
Dale Cardwell.
Thank you. If Jim or anyone else wants an apology for me ruining the touchy-feely warm debate, I'm not going to apologize, because that's what I've been doing for 23 years, because you have to have somebody that will work for you. The panelists don't want to feel bad about tonight. The guests here don't want to feel bad about tonight, but you know what? You're feeling bad. Somebody has to work for your interests. Again, I am not going to take the giant special interest money that's ruining our country. I will be your employee. You will tell me what to do, and together we can win.
Jim Martin.
I want to thank the thousands of Georgians who are supporting my campaign. Together, we've put together a campaign that can beat Saxby-Chambliss and change the failed policies of the Bush administration. Middle-class Georgians are hurting. Working people are getting further and further behind. I have a long record of standing up for the people, and I'll do that in Washington as your United States Senator. You can help me by going to my website, martinforsenate.com. And finally, I'd be honored to have your vote on Tuesday.
And Vernon Jones.
I'm Vernon Jones, and I want to be your senator. Yeah, I have a record of balancing budgets, a record of creating jobs where we're hurting right now. I have a record of doing renewable energy. I have a solid record of accomplishments that I can use that experience, and I can use my relationships with both sides of the aisle, both Republicans and Democrats, to bring together North Georgia, Middle Georgia, and South Georgia. We're one Georgia. We're hurting here in Georgia. I am tired of investing in other countries and not investing back here at home for our children. To leave no child behind, left the stakes behind, the child behind, and the money behind. It didn't work. It's enough of partisan politics. It's enough of building bridges and roads and schools in foreign countries, and our schools are collapsing. Our bridges are collapsing. Vote for Vernon Jones. Vote for change. Vote for new leadership. And vote for experience. Someone can hit the ground and make things happen.
Thank you very much to all of the candidates. That concludes our debate. Our thanks to the candidates and, of course, to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging tonight's debate. For more information about the Atlanta Press Club and tonight's candidates and future debates, log on to www.atlantapressclub.org. The debates aired on Georgia Public Broadcasting will be archived at that website. I'm Frederica Whitfield. Thanks so much for joining us for Debates 2008.
This program was funded in part by a grant from the late Tom Watson Brown and by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.